Everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today for what is probably going to be a very painful episode to record is AJ. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, all things considered, I suppose things are looking meh.
Meh, yeah, it's probably the correct word. And Mozza, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. I'm ready to wax lyrical about the performance last night.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. I think realistically, there's not actually loads to cover in terms of football and what happened in the game, so we could probably cover that super quickly and then get on to talk about the bigger picture. We will, however, start how we always do because I think there was something that happened last night that perplexed us all, and that was Fulham randomly making five changes. AJ, we discussed this potential team before in the preview. None of us had down Fulham making five changes. I'm shocked that none of us did because we should know that Fulham reached the 40-point mark. Marco Silva does something that's absolutely perplexing to all of us. He's done it for the last 3 years in a row. Uh, how do you explain last night's starting lineup, especially when half the players that have been dropped didn't need to be because they're probably not going to play in the FA Cup game on Sunday?
Well, I half hinted at it during the preview in saying that most teams would make changes for this fixture because they're playing someone in the relegation zone and it's three matches after the last game. But Marco Silva doesn't normally do stuff like that. He will stick with his tried and true 11. The one time he does the exact thing that I predicted he won't do was this fixture and made the five changes in positions that they really didn't need to be changed. As for the starting lineup, where to begin? Diop deserved his place. Fine, fair enough. Tete, interesting. He seemed like the only player that was actually out of gas in the last game, and yet he's retained his position. Robinson coming in, I can only assume, is just a wholesale swap, is what it is, whatever. Kearney coming in, I was kind of okay with because I thought, right, we talked about this in the preview. We're going to combat their free in midfield and we're going to flood the middle of the park because we've got a better quality than they do on the ball. And Kearney is the epitome of that. Perfect. King makes sense for that as well, and so does Iwobi. But then I looked at the team a little bit longer and went, there's no left wing there. Who the fuck is playing at left wing? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks, like a house falling down, and I was actively depressed. And I mentioned it in our own group chat how upsetting it was that we're going to see Alex Wobi at left wing, and I knew it before the game had even kicked off. And at that point, I was already dreading this fixture because it meant that Kenny was deep, King was wherever he wanted to be, and Iwobi was at left wing, pinned to the touchline. And at that point, I just wanted to throw my television set out the window.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, really, because the only change that needed to be made in the game was Harry Wilson coming out for injury, and he's quite simply replaced by putting Chukwueze on the right wing. Like that's the only change that was needed. The Diop one, bringing Anderson back because he's back from illness. Yeah, look, Diop deserved his spot after the way he played on Sunday against Spurs. It's simple as that. The other changes that were made were just completely perplexing. Oscar Bob played brilliantly on Sunday against Spurs. Gets dropped for some unknown reason. Alex Iwobi is playing absolutely fantastic in the centre of the pitch. Gets taken out for Tom Kearney. We're gonna have to have a conversation about Tom Kearney during this episode as well because I was really worried about some of the things I saw from him last night. Emil Smith Rowe, yes, his numbers aren't great. We don't watch football with numbers. We watch football with our eyes, right? Has been brilliant over the last 2 months. So why he's been dropped, I don't know. Tete, who arguably, as you said, was absolutely off his feet on Sunday by full time, is the only one I would have understood if he weren't playing. And he looked dead on his feet 5 minutes in. Robinson we're going to have to talk about because, yes, he's coming back from injury and, yes, he hasn't had any minutes, but he looked like he was running on jelly. He just did not, he looks a shadow of himself. Like, if I was him, I'd be worrying about keeping my place in the US team for the World Cup because he was so poor last night. He was poor going forward. He was poor at the back. And yes, we did point out pre-game that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is a hell of a player for him to have to cover in that position, which is probably the reason why I wasn't that shocked to see him brought in for Ryan Sessegnon, right? But Bissaka just had free flow of that whole wing, back and forth, because Jedi was just never where he wanted to be. He was caught out of position about 7 or 8 times. He overcommitted 3 or 4 times in that first half, especially. It's so frustrating to see. But ultimately, it's a night of Fulham shooting themselves in the foot and some refereeing calls both ways that were absolutely diabolical. And we have to talk about some of them. I don't really want to. We don't. There's not really loads to talk about in the game, so let's just go over the game super quickly, and then we can discuss the bigger problems with Fulham here, because I don't want to torment any of us uh, on the ins and outs of the game. I think we all watched it. We all had to live that punishment once. We shouldn't have to live it twice. The first half, we're so poor, lackadaisical on the ball. No passing being strung together. Players looking like they are on a different planet from each other, let alone on the same pitch as each other. Tom Cairney, someone we usually rely on being very good with his feet and keeping the ball, can't make 2 passes. Sanderberg completely missing. Rail might as well not have been there. And Josh King, bless him, he had 1 or 2 moments where he got the ball and he tried really hard to run up the pitch. And the chance at the end of the first half where he probably should have scored was non-existent. And you can't really bemoan too much. He's still young. He's still learning, right? That is what that is. But ultimately, we were poor, like extremely poor. West Ham were exceptionally poor. And it's just an absolute pain in the backside. Look, let's cover some of the game. Yeah, let's talk about some of the key moments in that first half, especially. The first one is the big one, right? It's the potential handball by Alex Iwobi. Look, I've had a lot of conversation with West Ham fans today that, look, I'm not going to have any West Ham fans moaning at me about handballs, considering that it was only 2 years ago we saw them score 2 goals against us where they were playing basketball. But ultimately, for me, it's not a handball. It's hit Alex Iwobi above the arm shoulder, which it doesn't matter. He's moved his arm towards the ball, or he's moved his arm at all. It's hit him too high up for it to be handball. It's as simple as that for me. But I understand why it's being questioned. And when you're in a position like West Ham are in the league and you're desperate for anything, you're going to moan about stuff. Second thing that happened in that first half that we need to talk about is the Fernandez second yellow card that wasn't given, that should have been given. Now, I'm gonna first say I don't think it was a free kick. I think Josh King kicks him, so I don't think it's a foul in the first place. But the ref's given a free kick in that position. It's a yellow card, and the fact that he didn't give a yellow card because he saw what player committed the foul is a real problem for me. Because if you watch it back, anyone who didn't see it, the referee goes to get his cards out of his pocket, realizes what players committed the foul, and puts them back away again because he doesn't want to have to give a second yellow card and send the player off. Ultimately, it's probably just incorrect because he shouldn't have been. It wasn't a foul in the first place. But by the letter of the law, that's a yellow card. He's stopped a goal scoring opportunity. Probably lucky it wasn't a red card. It's as simple as that, right? Fulham go in, West Ham 0-0 half time. Drab game of football. It was poor. It was so poor. We looked like a team that had made 5 changes. West Ham looked like a team that were fighting for their life and really couldn't string anything together. Mozza, going in at half time, mate, what was the feeling like at the ground? What were you feeling watching that? Because the football you saw was poor in that first half.
Yeah, pretty ho-hum, to be honest. I was actually thinking, oh, is it just going to be one of those games, no score draw? I was surprised, given the lineup, which the players that played, and I'll say a bit more on that later. I'll say a lot more on it later. But, I wasn't filled with confidence, and even just walking into Craven Cottage, I was wondering, like, are West Ham going to be up for this? because they're fighting for survival. Of course they are. If you can call it a London derby, I don't think we really see each other as rivals, unless you're of the age where you can remember our claim to fame of being in a 1975 Cup final, which we didn't win. But yeah, the way that they started as well, I think they just totally caught us off guard. What was the feeling around me? I don't know. I mean, I can tell you, and I will tell you the feeling later on. But yeah, I didn't hold out much hope. I was just shocked, considering the excellent performance we put in 3 days prior against Spurs. Yeah, I, it's just one of those classics. Oh, it's Fulham. We're fighting one of the teams in, you know, the relegation zone. Yeah, midweek, another London team. Here we go. So I wasn't ever convinced, even before the game, really, that we were going to come away with 3 points. I thought we'd be lucky to get a draw, if anything.
Yeah, let's cover the second half quickly because there's only really 3 talking points from the second half. The first one being the penalty that was given for us. We spoke about it in our group chat. I don't think it was a penalty. I don't think the West Ham players made any attempt to make a tackle. I think Tom Kenny's just kicked the back of his leg and gone down. I don't think it's a penalty. You know, anyone feel free to disagree with me on that, but you know, I'd be really annoyed if that was given against us. We've seen them given against us. You know, anyone who remembers that West Ham game where Kevin De Bruyne kicked the Fulham defender last minute of the game and fell down like he'd just been shot by a sniper will remember that. It just
Man
weren't a
City.
penalty. Yeah. And then the second, the big talking point, and I'm gonna go on a rant about Leno when we talk about players in a minute, but I do not understand what Bernd Leno is doing as he comes out for a ball, takes control of the ball, takes the ball away from a defender, and then rather than just booting the ball clear, waits for the defender to react after he's touched it. It's proper airheaded goalkeeping. I have enough of Leno and he's popping on wrists every other week, but I cannot forgive goalkeeping like that. He does this once or twice a season where we can see goals where you're just wondering what the hell he's doing. And it's unforgivable. Like for as it was his birthday, the fact he's given West Ham a gift is annoying. You know, the fact that he's now opening up another conversation that we're going to have about replacing him during the summer and whether or not we should do it. I just want to put it out there for every Fulham fan and to talk about, and we can do in a minute when we discuss it. He is the third highest paid goalkeeper in the Premier League. That we're not getting third best goalkeeper in the Premier League there. We're
Who are the
getting one
two
of the
above him?
worst. David Raya and I think
Donnarumma.
one of the Man United, one of the Man United goalkeepers. But it's just not acceptable
Oh.
from him. We have to talk about our substitutions. We were all quite happy that Marco Silva, for once, was quite proactive. The game was getting away. We weren't really controlling it. He made subs early, but not a single one of those subs that came on last night. And I mean, other than maybe Castagna, who had a couple of shots, covered himself in any glory. They were all shocking. And then we just whimpered out, really. Nothing really happened. West Ham held back onto their lead, and we didn't produce anything. We didn't have the minerals to even look like we were going to produce anything. And that is where the frustration lies. That's the game over with. Let's talk about what we want to actually talk about. And that is the performance put in by some of the players last night and Marco Silva and his perplexing match choices when we reach 40 points. 3 years in a row now, Fulham have reached 40 points or almost got to 40 points and just gone off a cliff. And every single time it's been matched with Marco Silva making decisions in games or starting lineup where he just completely overthinks what's going on, overthinks the situation, overthinks what we're doing, and we absolutely nosedive. And the worrying sign is if it's anything this year, like it has been for the last 2 years when he's done that, the next 4 or 5 games are an absolute washout. And we have to make sure that this doesn't happen again for us. AJ, let's talk about Marco Silva and this happening. For it to happen once is frustrating. For it to be the third year in a row is unforgivable in my eyes, and it's exactly why I am personally not really that bothered if Marco Silva doesn't sign a new contract as manager of Fulham, because when people talk about has Marco Silva taken Fulham as far as Marco Silva can take Fulham, this is what I lead to, and the fact that every year when we finally look like we're looking comfortable and maybe looking at Europe, we fall off a cliff.
Yeah, Marco Silva's got a proven track record of getting results in games where no one expects to get them, and that's terrific. But he continuously falls short in the games where we're expected to win, and it happens at all points of the season, not just this sort of 40 point hurdle. But you're right in the sense that the team seem to just completely give up either close to or at 40 points and fall off of a cliff. Whether or not that's ultimately because that's a hurdle that the club have been told is something to aim for, and there's that relief in their minds or even subconsciously that once they're over it they can sort of take it a little bit more easy because they know, right, we don't have to stress as much now, or whether or not that's just a coincidental thing that's just been unfortunate to happen 3 seasons in a row. Honestly, who knows? But at this stage, it's something that needs addressing because every single season for the last 3 years, we've been in a position where we're 3 or 4 points or something like that off of Champions League places, let alone fringe European competitions like the European Conference League or something like that. And every single time we fuck it up and end up talking about where in mid-table we're going to finish, whether or not it's between 8th or 12th. And it's going to be exactly the same this season as we go into this really tough string of matches, and it's just going to be exceedingly difficult for us to get points. Like, realistically, looking at our games, Southampton is probably one of the easiest ones coming up, but then we've got Forest, who are fighting for their lives, Burnley, who are now potentially fighting to not be the shittest team in the league because Wolves are in form. We've got Liverpool, who, yeah, to be fair, they probably haven't got much to fight for, but they could make a late push for the top four. Brentford, who are actually trying to get into Europe now, Aston Villa, who are trying to get into the top four, Arsenal, that are trying to get into the top four, Bournemouth, which at that point will probably be a nothing game, and that will probably be the one that we win. Wolves, who are fighting to potentially stay up at that point of the season, extremely unlikely, but if they continue this run of form, they will do. And then Newcastle to round the season off, where we'll be on the beach anyway. So, like, realistically, hold on to your seats because we're just going to have absolutely fuck all to enjoy over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
I think we'll talk about it when we come to the preview. Maybe not the Southampton game, because I think the Southampton game is going to be slightly differently. But when we go to preview the next league game, the Forest game, there's going to be talk about a reaction needed to last night's game, because there were too many players that put in performances that were best blips. At most, I would not argue that I wouldn't want to see him play in a Fulham shirt again. And it's a really weird thing, right? That, you know, I'm going to have a conversation about a player that I love in Tom Kearney now and say that we've given him that extra year. Is anyone regretting that? Because
No.
he's in the last 3 or 4 performances he's made, he's not exactly been great. We came on against Spurs on Sunday. He gave the ball away 5 or 6 times super easily and just didn't look good at all. And yesterday looked completely out of depth. Every time he got the ball, he couldn't make a pass. Every time unless it was finding Sander Berg, who then couldn't find a pass. Sander Berg, who I gave a little bit of respect to for his performance against Spurs on Sunday, has gone back to being Sander Berg that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and that is absolutely ridiculously poor. And I get the argument that some people make that he's playing out of position. He needs to be that box-to-box midfielder, not the holding midfielder. And granted, that's probably true. I'd probably believe that more if I'd seen him get a shot on target in the time he's been at Fulham, let alone actually do anything positive going forward. You then look at Rail, who, other than scoring a penalty when we get them, just doesn't look like he's doing much. Then you look at the bench and the players coming on. Muniz looks lost. Doesn't quite. I think he's in one of those positions where, as a striker, he's just so desperate to try to score a goal that he's just trying to be here, there, and everywhere and being nowhere. Uh, Josh King, as much as I love him, he's just not. He's ineffective at the moment. He just seems to be a bit stuck. But I'm not too surprised he was, because the senior players around him last night, the ones who should be guiding him through a game, were in mud themselves, and it's pretty hard to talk a boy around from that. Alex Iwobi last night, I'm not going to talk bad for him because he's playing at left wing, and none of us want to see him there. He's not a left winger. The fact that he played such a long time on the left wing last night was ridiculous. We've all argued how much we need to see him in the middle of the pitch, and I think last night proved that that's where he needs to be. There's an awful lot of performances to talk about, and I'm not even started on Bernd Leno because I don't want to talk about Bernd Leno anymore. I think we need to buy a new goalkeeper. He's being paid way too much for the performances to put in. He hasn't even remotely looked like ever losing his place playing for Fulham, and that's part of the reason I think why we often see him put in performances like he does. He's not good enough. He's got popped on wrists, and his mind goes blank. And for me, that is not making of a goalkeeper that Fulham need. We don't have the luxury of having a goalkeeper who's going to cost us 9 points a season like he does. And I have it down that he's cost us 9 points this season through moments like that. And that is ridiculous from a goalkeeper. Yeah, the defending after he makes the mistake, shocking. But quite frankly, he makes that moment, and it's not good enough. Mozza, looking at some of the players last night, look, I know we don't like being ultra negative, but we have to look at some of the performances last night. Standout performances isn't quite what I mean, but what players stood out to you the most last night as like really being under par against, let's be honest, a West Ham team that were not only beatable but didn't really offer much, and they only really scored because we handed it to them on the plate.
Well, yeah, I've got 3 that I want to talk about. I'll start by saying just I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it's one of the worst performances I've seen in my lifetime. I suppose really I'm talking about the pejorative second half, but again, like I said earlier, considering how well we were against Spurs, and the starting lineup being baffling, like even with an unavailable injured Wilson. And look, we mentioned Tom Kearney. Like those of you that watch the show, and of course you boys, you'll know my feelings on Tom Kearney. So what I'm about to say, it's not going to be a verbal assault on him, because although he was crap last night, for me he was not as disgraceful as Sanderberg, Bernd Leno, and Anthony Robinson. And yeah, some of you will scream other names like Iwobi also, but I can't be asked to be as furious on him. So I'll try and do this somewhat the order I just mentioned, as Berg and Leno tie into each other somewhat. As you just outlined, Ash, it's common knowledge that Berg, our 6'4" centre mid, right? He hasn't been on form for most of the games he's played this season. But what I've noticed to do, or not do, is when he's got the ball in midfield with time and space around him, we're pressing, and he doesn't attack the space or even try and beat players. He panics like he's got a hot potato, and he attempts the strangest passes out wide. You don't always want to do the most obvious passes, but if it's there, it's there. He never seems to do that or uses initiative. And he's often unsuccessful with these wide passes anyway. His first touch is shocking, like embarrassing even. But what I'm going to say now is what I say pretty much on every review podcast I'm on. And quite frankly, I'm at the point where I don't know if I'm insane or if you boys on this are too polite to tell me otherwise, because maybe I've not got quite the technical football mind you have. But it's fannying about, back passing the ball between the back line of defence and Leno. It's got to come to a stop. And you don't even need a football brain, right, to see that this is beyond dreadful when we do it. It does nothing for us. We set ourselves back beyond deep. And really, I want to scream this from a mountaintop because I've had enough of it. And I don't think enough Fulham fans are speaking about this or aware of it. And why are we doing it when we're losing? And it's bollocks. I do see fans around me in the hammy end get frustrated, like screaming around me, and like becking us to drive forward. Whatever way the goal is, whatever end it's at, where we're meant to be fucking scoring. But why aren't we driving forward? And I see Calvin Bassey last night, and as I've seen him in the last few games as well, with his arms out either side, like flapping his hands, trying to press the defensive line up pitch, as we're pressing, and the others just have like no sense of urgency. You said the word lackadaisical earlier, but last night everyone was. Well, Berge's passed the ball while we're doing this back passing between Leno and the defensive line. To be fair to him, he panics because he seems like he's not anticipating it. And you ought not to play the ball across the goal. Our oppositions notice this and they pressure us and they don't actually produce anything of worth from this tactic because we lose the ball to them or we lose it to a set piece. Like, why can't Leno just take a fucking goal kick instead of rolling it to Bassey literally when he's standing a yard next to him? And we've talked about the goal Leno's responsible for. I've played as a goalkeeper, you've played as a goalkeeper, Ash. You come off your line to make yourself big. Why is he so far off his line? Why is he not communicating to Bassey that he's going to awfully try and control it down with his chest? And then he didn't attempt to tread back to his line when he did said cock up. That awful. Finally, I'm nearly done. Don't worry. Or if you're Anthony Robinson, maybe you should. Anthony Robinson, we've wondered since his injury, and when he's been back with minimal game time he's had, that he might not be giving his all because of, ahead of the World Cup. And we don't know this for a fact, but it might be food for thought. But that aside, last night, he looked like a man who'd just given up. And somewhere in the last 10 minutes, he kicked the ball away, head down. I think West Ham had a set piece. And I just thought to myself, you're a disgrace. I can't remember the last time I've seen Robinson beat a player down the wing or not give the ball away, at least consistently. So what's his problem? What's the issue there? We complain Cess isn't a left back, but I'd rather have Cess play in that position for the rest of the season over Robinson, who ought to be ashamed of himself. That's all I've got to say on that.
There's a couple of things we have to quickly cover because obviously we're running over time. But for me, the issue with Bernd Leno and the mistake he made isn't the lack of communication. The problem is that if you're the goalkeeper and you come out as far as you have and you make the touch to take the ball under control, it's then your ball. So therefore, it's your responsibility to clear the ball, not to take that touch with your chest and then to leave it for the defender who's standing next to you. Calvin Bassey, bless him, right? Clearly, he's going to get that ball and he's going to make the clearance. But Leno comes out, chest the ball, so Bassey backs off. Because Leno's got the ball. It's your job to clear it. But Leno chests the ball and then just completely has a brain fart and just doesn't clear the ball. But by that point, Bassey's on his back heels, 4 yards away, and can't react quick enough to the fact that Somerville's standing there to get the ball to then control it and then to score. I would say, Sunday league goalkeeping, but I did that once when I was 11, and I got absolutely clattered by my manager for it at under 11 football. Because if you're the goalkeeper and you take charge of a moment, you have to finish taking charge of that moment, and it's as simple as that. Look, I'm not going to go too much into Robinson either because he's coming back from injury, right? But he looks so off it. Like he looks off pace, and we said it too many times in the past that Robinson relies on his athleticism too much to make up for his lack of ability in certain places on the pitch. And when he doesn't have the athleticism because he's not fit enough for it, it's really telling. I said it earlier on. Wan-Bissaka had free roam of that right wing. Going backwards or going forward, he had free roam because Alex Iwobi had nothing being out on the left. and Robinson had nothing defending or attacking out on that left. And it just meant that we were so lopsided. And when you play at Craven Cottage on such a small pitch, you cannot afford to be that way. But ultimately, look, we can cover this game really quickly and sum it up by saying it doesn't matter how poor everyone played last night, because the person who made the most mistakes last night was Marco Silva. He set them up wrong. He made too many changes. He overthought another game where we get the 40 points, and for some unknown reason, he turns into tactico, and he just completely. We can't explain the changes that were made, and no one. I've not spoken to a single Fulham fan today who's been able to pinpoint to me why those changes were needed or what the difference they made, and that's the worrying thing. What is clear to see is going into the FA Cup game, which we are going to cover in an episode that will be out tomorrow. We're going to see changes, so it makes even less sense that that many changes were made in this game, and it's a real worrying thing, and we're going to have to see a reaction going into that Forest game. Playing Forest at the City Ground is hard enough. Playing Forest at the City Ground after putting a performance in like we've just put in is going to be really, really difficult, unless 5 or 6 players who had absolute stinkers last night are brave enough to step up and say, I need to make up for the last performance that I put in because it was not good enough. And it is as simple as that. Usually we finish these by talking about man of the match. There isn't one. And it's probably about the 5 or 6 time we've done this season. And it's not just because we lost. It's because nobody comes out of last night's game looking like they did a good job. Nobody. I can't even sarcastically give it to the referee because he was shit too. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, it was not good enough. And ultimately, the team who fought more won. And this is what I said pre-game, that you can get outclassed, you can't get outfought. We got outfought, we lost. It's as simple as that. What is clear is there's going to have to be a reaction in the FA Cup game. There's going to have to be a reaction in the Forest game. And it's as simple as that. Lads, thank you very much for joining me on this match review. Thanks everyone who's come to watch us. I know it's not an easy one. Please let us know your thoughts on the game in the comment section. Share amongst your Fulham mates. As we say, we're going to have an FA Cup preview out tomorrow morning for the Southampton game. So come and join us for that one as well. Hopefully, we'll be in a bit of a better mood for that because we're looking forward to a game that potentially we can move on in the FA Cup. And we're probably expecting changes for. Not much more to say on that one other than come on, you whites.